Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
Okay, Jacqui, welcome to the Australian Finance Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. We've been talking about this for weeks. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm really stoked to be here as well.
Yes, well, we have been, we've been chatting for a little while now because I've been stalking you and your new book and asking for all your advice because I've been writing a book. And so I was very excited to have the opportunity to talk about your book on the podcast.
You must update us on how you're going, by the way.
Yeah, I did a bit of a soft launch on a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago. And
I heard
that
it.
It was something. Yeah, so I did a soft launch. But yes, it's all going very well. Very much thanks to your help and advice.
Thanks, Gemma.
Today is all about you and your book. So for those listening, I'm very excited to introduce you to Jacqui Clarke. So Jacqui is the author of Stop Worrying About Money, a great book that helps you start planning and securing your financial future. So we're going to be talking about that today. And before we jump into Jacqui's story, what the book's about, all of this kind of stuff, I want to make sure that, as always, our listeners know that if we do talk about any financial concepts, products, anything like that, which we generally do touch on, it is for general advice, general education, information, knowledge, that type of stuff only. We don't know your needs, goals, and objectives, so we can't give you any personal advice. It's really important that you get information, get financial advice, talk to your advisor before you make any decisions. Okay, so Jacqui, tell us a bit about yourself. What's your career been to date? So you're obviously a published author now, which is amazing, but what has, career-wise looked like up until this point?
I think that's a great question. It sort of makes me laugh because it's like becoming an author is like the pinnacle of your career in a funny way, but it certainly wasn't anything I planned right from the start. And so for me, really, I spent 30 years in professional services, so chartered accountant, chartered tax advisor. I've worked on boards for a long time now, but basically I was a partner at Deloitte for about just under 20 years and stepped out of that role 5 years ago. So it's been a really interesting journey as an entrepreneur. I guess I was always entrepreneurial inside the business anyway. And then only, what must be 2 or 3 years ago now, I engaged a personal coach because I was thinking, what is this really going to look like for me? I always try and look out, say 10 years. And the sort of culmination of those conversations were, okay, now's the time I need to write a book because I've got all this financial wisdom that I just really wanted to be able to share with people because I think everyone would appreciate that there's only so much time in a day where you can actually get about to help people. So for me, it was just one of those things that needed to be done.
Mm-hmm. And what I love about your book is it's so practical. Like, it's so easy to read. And I love it because it's very much kind of my style and what I gel with and the types of clients that I like dealing with. But it is so practical. And Owen and I talk about this as well, that I love that you got a personal coach because Owen's seen like a business life type of coach. I'm a money coach who ended up getting like a business coach who helped me with kind of everything from like just getting, I joke that she was pretty much like that person that just had to make sure that I was exercising, eating, doing my work goals. Like, she was pretty much just like she was my babysitter. And I did that for 3 months and it's just like changed my work, life, everything.
Yeah, and look, it was probably a great segue, actually. One of the things I would love to talk to you about is the Personal Finance Village, which is kind of jumping around a bit, but actually a personal coach, like a psychologist, a money coach, they sort of form part of this village. I call it the Personal Finance Village because that's what I was writing about, and that was the way I wanted people to contemplate it. But by the same token, you think about how I've written the book in a really practical sense. I get people all the time saying, for example, someone at a pub in a country town wanted me to come along and do an author talk, which is quite funny. And she was quite afraid to read a finance book, but she rang me and said, actually, you know what, this is like really down to earth. It's really easy for me to understand. I feel good reading this. So it's nice to know that you sort of can hit that mark by getting access to people. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that village is so important. And I actually call it a village as well. And I know a lot of other money coaches that call it a village. And like where that concept for me comes from is like when they tell you about raising your kids and you need a village. And sometimes you think you've got a village, but you don't actually lean on them like you should, or it's not the right people. So tell us a bit more about that, about who you think are the key people that need to be in your village and what they kind of do. And I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, look, it's something I think you build up over time. And if you think initially, one of the things that I struggle with actually as an advisor to people with wealth is getting people to consult before they do something. Because often in our businesses, people tend to go off and start a new business, buy a house, buy this, buy that, spend their money without actually consulting someone. And I think that financial stuff is really quite emotional. So the nice thing about the finance village is it's somebody that it's a safe pair of hands, somebody that can kind of help you navigate things when they are a bit emotional and sort of get you to see things a bit more straight, or more straight, should I say. But I think dialing up who you have around you, and it might be an accountant, it might be a lawyer, it might be a trusted family friend, it might be somebody who's got some skills maybe that you don't have that you think are necessary in making the decision. So it could be all sorts of characters. I think a psychologist is important. Yes, a coach, and there's obviously lots of different types of coaches, including your personal fitness coach, might be a dietitian, might be a nutritionist. Yeah, all these people I think help us get to turn up each day and being our best selves. But that's where I think that village is really critical. And people might say, oh, I can't afford to have an accountant or a lawyer. It's not so much that. It's really about recognizing there are some, if you have a development area or a skill that maybe needs to be sharpened up, then that's possibly where you go to help build out that village and look for people, that can actually support you in that way.
And they need to be trusted sources, but they don't necessarily have to cost you a lot. So the Rask community, the Australian Finance Podcast, have access to, the forums, the courses, all of this kind of stuff. And it's just knowing the right place to go for the information.
Yeah, that's so important too, because I think, you offer quite a lot of free support for people. And it's just there. You have to be prepared just to sort of peel the onion back a little bit to go and seek that type of advice. And, sometimes what I would often recommend to people is if you're not sure, you want to build your education up, Rask is like a great place to go to start that process. And that helps you feel more confident. It's like going to get your car fixed, which we know that you've been doing a bit of your own work on lately. Am I allowed to bring that up? That's unreal, right? But you did your research and you worked it out and you saved a fortune, actually.
I hate spending money.
Yeah, well, there you go. I've got a book for you.
On certain things, yeah.
Yes,
but yes.
Anyway.
So how do you recommend people find their village?
Yeah, I'll keep it really simple. Recognizing where the gaps are for you or where maybe your development areas are, and then you go meet people. Because I think you need to have a coffee with somebody who feel like the vibe's right. Often I see people, the classic one is husband and wife have a financial advisor, but one of the two has that connection, the other doesn't. And so sometimes then that means that one of the spouses, and it seems to be typically a woman, doesn't go to the meetings anymore because they don't really feel a vibe with that advisor. And I'm saying, go get yourself one. Get somebody, it's like having a GP that you trust. You don't go to the same one necessarily that all your family go to. You go one that you've got a good, it's the whole rapport building process.
Yeah.
It's important. So that's how I'd start it, which is like going to the low-hanging fruit in your network. It might be someone you went to university with. It might be a friend of a friend. We always want to be a little bit careful because probably the most important part of all of this, what I say, is making sure that people have the professional qualifications that they say they have as well. So we don't want people that, there's plenty of advisors, and there's not plenty of advisors out there, but there are shonks out there. You want to be really careful that you don't fall into their hands by someone, friend of a friend recommending someone. So do check them out, check out someone they know, do your due diligence on them before you work with them as well.
Yeah, it's like any industry, right? There's those bad eggs. And I often find when people say, "Oh, I've looked for an advisor before or an accountant and I had a bad experience." Often it's the vibe, like, and I go, you got to gel with them. But often, or it was their specialty didn't meet your need or something like that. So I always agree, like you've got to speak to a few different ones.
Yeah, I think the other one too is like, well, I mentioned cars briefly, but you don't want to be talked down to by any advisor because it's their area of expertise. It's not yours. So their job is to educate you and take you on a journey, not to say this is how it should be. You want to find those people. Find your people.
Absolutely. The ones that you don't feel like there's any silly questions and that you feel like you're a team. Yeah.
And probably the only one thing that I look for and I do offer to my clients as well is not being a yes person. So just because if I'm paying somebody for work or vice versa, they're not just going to get a yes. So
I love that.
Making sure that you can kind of test that is important.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think some people, I have had clients in the past that I think they do just want a yes person. And that's when I notice those clients, I'm like, I'm not.
No, I should have a sign up that says I'm not just a yes person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I'd love your thoughts on this, it's okay, in my opinion, it's okay. And we really need to identify when we've outgrown our village and when we need to move on. And that's a great thing. And it's, like we have a loyalty tax with our, banks and all our subscriptions and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, we've got experts, potentially our financial situations or even our needs, our fitness goals, our whatever are going to surpass what that person can do. Yeah. So knowing
really
when to
point.
outgrow.
And in my book is a great story that I share about an executive couple that we met who had classic, alliance or loyalty to the family accountant, but they had come into some stock options, which isn't like the most sexiest thing, but the family accountant didn't have any skills or experience with that. And in fact, would have cost them in the realms of $20 or $30 million had we not been able to intervene with the right level of expertise to actually help them out. But to even be prepared to have a conversation and just open up a little bit, that was quite an effort. And some people stay too long, which is the other thing, sort of resting on, this is the comfy couch, I'll just stick with this advisor. They kind of know all my secrets in the closet type of thing. But actually, you need to shake that up. And I think it's important too, because having been an advisor, I think it's important that you check in. Like if you've been paying somebody 5 years to do your accounts and tax returns, for example, in my field, it's good to say, well, actually, is it easier now or is it harder? Is that fee fair? Maybe I need to go somewhere else. So here's a quote I've got from someone else. They're the types of things that I'm used to experience with people, but it's good to do that too.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you've got a professional relationship, they're open to talking about that, and making sure that they're still providing you the best service. And if you've been with them for a long time, they might be doing you a favor and want you, gone anyway, so they can be changing their service and all of that kind of, it might not be a good fit. They might be doing it out of loyalty and it's just not the right fit.
Yeah, and you might notice this too. Like when somebody comes to me the first time, the first thing I always do is like a financial health check. And so I'm looking over things and there's two ways you could go with that. You could completely criticize the existing or previous advisor for what they've missed, or you could go, actually, they didn't have the same type of relationship that I'm building with this person. I'm able to extract information in a different way that's starting to open up different pathways and maybe explains why they hadn't investigated that particular point. So there is some advantage also to freshening things up over time. And changes in advisors in the same businesses aren't the worst thing. You don't have to leave the whole, don't have to throw the baby out with bathwater. You could change advisors and see if that person's got greater rapport and if they identify something different for you too. So
yeah, great.
Our choices, right? We can make these choices. People sometimes get a bit like locked in.
Absolutely. And nobody's going to care more about your money than you, or nobody's going to be more affected. So you need to be making the decisions.
Yeah, spot on.
But I think that's a good segue onto something that's in your book a lot, is about like the accountability, like taking accountability, financial accountability. So that would be a great one for you to talk to us about.
Yeah. And look, it starts with us. It starts with you. Yeah. And one of the things I guess I called out just before was often if I meet with couples and there's someone who's sort of focused on financial stuff and someone who's not. And my sort of soapbox moment is you need to be accountable to yourself financially. So I think that's really critical. Yeah, is getting people to actually recognize that they need to pay attention to the money coming into the house, the money going out the house. That probably segues also into things like knowing open your front door costs.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's maybe the starting point, because when I raise that with people, they completely like I draw blank. If you say somebody, was it cost to open your front door? Well, first explain the concept, which is relatively straightforward, like actually understanding what the things are that require that building. But your rent, your mortgage, your council rates, your strata levies, whatever it might be, your Netflix, your subscriptions, your insurances, all those things. Because I've been in those situations where I've had to say to people, you're living beyond your means. This isn't actually the right lifestyle. This isn't sized right for you. But that accountability piece is actually recognizing what is actually going out, being responsible for how you spend money, but also being responsible on the income side. And if you're not in a situation, or if someone else is the breadwinner in the house and that's not your thing, that's fine. But it's self-development, it's protection, it's building your financial literacy, which is such a significant issue. And I mean, I'm sure this is, one of the big reasons why Rask is around actually, is we have quite a significant drop-off in financial literacy in Australia. It's not taught in schools, even though I'm starting to see the buds, if you like, of some people picking up on schools. Like, in fact, I had a librarian ring me the other day and say, I've seen your book. I think it'd be wonderful to be talking to our kids about. And I'm like, wow, yes, cool. Like, I'd love to do that, because I feel like this is the bit that's missing. And parents, we sort of battle through trying to teach kids about money. I don't know, I'm talking about perhaps too many things at once here. The number one
no, not at all. We love that.
For me is being accountable to yourself financially. And like, I don't want to get lost on that, because so many people, and that's why I wrote the book as well, literally put their hands over their ears. They don't want to know about the money thing, because what people see is if they've got a job, money's coming in, money's going out. That equation works fine for me. There's no problem. Except shit happens.
Yep.
Mishaps happen, challenges happen, something on the car breaks, something, you go on a holiday, oops, you spend a little bit more than you planned, somebody dies, you get divorced, all these types of things can be a significant breakdown, if you like, if you're not aware of how you're spending your money. And it's not just about being prepared for something that might go wrong, actually. It's having full awareness so that when you reach the age of 40, 50, 60 and you decide you want to work a little bit less and get off that hamster wheel that you're on, or the treadmill, how are you going to do that? So the gap just doesn't naturally open up between your income and your expenses, and you have this bunch of savings. You have to make that call today, which is what am I going to set aside so that I do have some money saved that I can invest, and imagine creating that income that is not dependent on your physical exertion. And that's certainly something that I've been focused on personally for quite a bit of time now, is actually trying to recognize how I can create income streams that are not requiring me, they're not dependent on me to show up, or my husband, for example.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because I find that a lot of people are so, fixated on the now, because so much is happening, and we need to be accountable to our future selves as well. And the things that we're doing today are really impacting the choices that we're going to have tomorrow.
Yeah. And I talk about the 3 biggest money mistakes, and I had an interesting conversation the other day. I was presenting to I actually asked to be a guest at International Women's Day with Smeg, and one of the things I talked about was the 3 biggest money mistakes that people make.
Oh, I'd love you.
Yeah, well, the first one that I talk about is actually just wearing and driving your money.
Yep.
And the reason why this is the number one mistake, I think, in Australia is we're all pretty focused on home ownership still in this country, or how far out of reach it is for a lot of people in each generation as they come online. But what is easy to spend your money on is clothes and cars, arguably. And so it's within your reach. So you can actually drive a nice car, but you can be renting a shitty apartment. That sort of fits today. And so when you're a younger person, you get your first paycheck, out of, say, university, you start to feel alive. You might still be living at home, actually. Well, in fact, you will be, because you're not going to leave home before you're 30 something, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics now. I've got all those kids at home, so I understand it. So you're actually making these choices because you can. You don't have a mortgage in front of you. But the reality is that seems so far away that having the latest outfit, what's on trend, having a nice bag or another discretionary spend, and having the car, why not? So I think that's the first thing. The second one, which goes to that personal accountability thing, is having your head in the sand. And some people just, again, the don't actually want to know about it. I probably see more people like that who don't want to know about it.
And are they thinking it's just going to work out, or are they just scared it's not going to and doesn't?
No, I think they believe it's just going to work out. Yeah. I think the difficulty with that is none of us have a crystal ball. And based on my experience, it doesn't just work out.
Yeah. I think that would come from the way that we've probably seen generations before us buy a house very cheap, work in the same job for 40 years and then retire, and they've owned their home, maybe had some super, but were okay on the pension. Like it kind of did just work out. Like obviously they had high interest rates and it would have been tough, but if from the outside it does look like it just works if you just go through the motions.
Have you seen what the age pension is in Australia now? Like, if I had to live on that, it will be a little bit frightening. And it is, I think it is difficult unless you've had a very simple life, always possibly lived on government benefits historically in your life as well. So you're a little bit adjusted to living a particular way, being incredibly conservative with spending. So, but I think that takes accountability as well. Because if you've got to live off an age pension in Australia, you need to be damn careful with every dollar you spend on groceries, which are our frightening costs these days.
Yeah, but I would also see the clients I work with in that retirement space, like that generation that we talk about, it just worked out. They're also very good with their money in terms of budgeting, very minimalist. It's none of this instant gratification.
There's no Uber Eats. There's no Amazon.
And if we think about we've just given you 2 money mistakes, they're not doing either of those.
Yeah. No. And look, the third one is really just putting your head completely in the sand.
So grab your money, head in the sand.
Yeah, and just not wanting to know about it, basically. Yeah.
Which we see a lot. And, it's hard when it's all doom and gloom out there. It is really hard to take accountability for it. But this is why your book is so amazing. So the book, again, is called Stop Worrying About Money, and we'll put it in the show notes where they can buy it. But it's such an easy read, very, very practical, and it's got like different work kind of sheets and stuff that you can do throughout it. The other thing that you've got in there, I love knowing the open your front door costs. Like that is just so important. And I think a lot of people don't know that. I think they think they know it.
And that's the tipping point, I think, when you talk about the 3 mistakes. That's the person who's got their head in the sand. If you just do this, this, it's like the biggest aha moment for people, because very quickly they see that number. And I speak to senior executive people all the time, and that number, open your front door cost, plus the discretionary spending they do on an annual basis, is equal to the income coming in. It's equal. There's no breathing room at all. And ideally, we're going to create some breathing room so that people can actually save and invest.
Yeah. And that breathing room is so important, because then when times get tough or things happen, you've already got a buffer there. Like you can't build your life based on that absolute maximum.
And people really do, tricky. And I talk about money mistakes often with people, because when people tell you their life story or their money story, which I do talk about, is sort of acknowledging where you've come from in respect of behaviour to money and how you've saved, if you haven't, or it'll be all right, mate, it'll work out. But actually recognising you can come back from mistakes. But the difficulty is right now the access to credit. Well, it's not that easy, actually, the access to credit, but it relatively is. So getting credit cards is a lot easier than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The buy now, pay later options are quite significant. So people can really go out on a limb. Imagine having monthly repayments on cars and furniture and TV screens and, kitchen appliances, and this is your baseline of costs. That's really overwhelming, and it feels, again, very hard to get out of. I've been through that process when it's a long time ago now, but 10, 15 years ago when I got divorced, like I was starting with nothing and having the only way I could have a car was actually to get a car on a lease arrangement, and then having to feel like I had all these cost layers and it was school fees, all sorts of things. And you just want to get to a point where you've got a little bit of leeway that you can get rid of the car loan, those
Just
types of
that
things. So you just don't have
snowball.
you just have all of these continual outgoings that you've got no control over because you made a commitment some time ago to pay for it, probably when you couldn't, in my case, and probably like other people's, I needed transport.
Yeah.
So that was like a must-have.
Yeah, and that, like, people are making choices today. Like, we talk about being smart with money and things, and some people are making choices because they don't have any other. Like, it's a really tough time. A lot of people are stretched and they're struggling. So it's about doing the best with what you can. But if you can be doing one thing to improve your financial situation, it might be reading a book like this, increasing your financial literacy, doing some free courses. And I always love the idea of people having a budget. So like your open your front door costs, right? If you're like, cutting expenses or you're increasing your income, I love the idea of people knowing where that's going to go before it kind of happens, so lifestyle creep doesn't happen. So I'm like, well, maybe you do a budget and it doesn't all work and you got to pull some stuff out. Well, maybe you just put them to the side and you're like, if money comes up, or if other expenses go down, or I get rid of that debt, these are going to be the first things that come back in because I'm excited for them. And just that, so you know where it's going to go, and it doesn't just get back to the point where you're like, where is all my money going again? And I haven't even put the things that add value back in.
Yeah. And I actually love that you talk about lifestyle creep, and I talk about expense creep in the same fashion. If I thought about how I ate 20 years ago or 30 years ago or even 10 years ago and what shifted in that, if I just went back to that, what are the types of savings that I could make? It's quite incredible, actually, when you look a little bit closer at it. That's just something that bugs me, that we all fall into the trap of with the expanding income. So you get a promotion or a pay rise, that gets spent before it hits the bank account. The tax refunds, 99% of people seem to spend their tax refunds before they've actually arrived. Like, oh my goodness.
Most people know what's going to happen. If I get $2,000 back, I know where it's going to go. Yeah.
I say, how about that goes into a savings account and earns you a couple of % interest first. Don't bring it into I've got that coming, and so that means we can go to Fiji for 7 days with the kids, that type of conversation. That's where I'm saying, trying to halt that maybe impulse, because in the absence of knowing what it costs to open your front door, you will never identify that gap that we're trying to expand, which is a savings and investment opportunity for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just comes back to that accountability. Like, yes, money is a tool to be enjoyed, but you have a responsibility to yourself, those around you, you want to be making sure that you're balancing looking after yourself today, tomorrow, and doing all the things that you want to be doing.
I do get that it's overwhelming, and it's easy for me to sit here as an accountant and go, what do you mean overwhelming? But I do understand, and that's why a lot of people completely shy away from the topic. I've probably grown up a little bit differently in the sense that we always talked about it, but in a very practical way, which was more about, clients. I grew up in a building company, and I used to answer the phones. My dad was a builder and a plumber. I used to answer the phones there, and I was aware of Saturday afternoons, Dad used to do the invoicing, and I remember him going to collect money from people. So back in the day when people actually had to pay cash or write a check, he'd go, after he wrote the invoices Saturday afternoon, go and collect the money, that type of thing. And you'd know when people weren't paying over a period of time. So just having that, and that's, I guess, from a business perspective, which is quite different to somebody relying on a wage coming in each week. But again, you want to know what levers you can adjust. And this is maybe where people get trapped. Let's say you get made redundant. Which lever do you pull first? What goes first? And if you're not sure what's going out the door, then it's very difficult to arrest the creep and how damaging that period of time could be for you, notwithstanding you might get a payment, which I see so many people do. They get redundancy payments and they basically stop working and maybe don't pick up work until that payment has expired,
Yeah,
based
it's
on
all
a normal
gone.
income level. Yeah. And I think, look, and I can't begrudge people for taking that time off because I think a lot of people might need that depending on the situation they've been in. But what's the opportunity in investing that and cutting your lifestyle costs down during that period? So if you decide to have 6 months of leave because you've got 6 months pay, then what's another way of looking at the open the front door costs at home and the discretionary expenditure, just to sort of navigate perhaps a greater buffer for yourself and your family.
And I think that is so important. So you talk a lot about goals, and we're big on, goals. So if people are really clear on their goals, that's going to make those decisions a lot easier as well. So tell us, how you talk to people about goal setting and what you kind of think is like the most important thing when it comes to setting goals around, that help you make decisions around where your front door costs are going.
Yeah, that's a great question because I think the key thing with goals is making them sexy. So if I say to somebody, what's your financial goal? They're like, what? Huh? Or do be own a house or pay off my mortgage, something like that. But actually, I think, what do your life goals look like? So is it a sabbatical? Is it travel? Is it retire at a certain date? Is it own a car? Whatever it might be. But I try and find those types of goals and then step back to here and now and say, right, well, what are the steps we need to take to get you there? It'd be no different saying I want to be a partner in a Big Four firm. Not many people want to do that right now because it's not a great place, but which I wanted to as a young adult. But let's say you have. So what are the steps you need to take to get there? And then, you might need a personal coach. You might need to set some money aside for that. So you might need to make some decisions about how you're spending today to have a personal coach so that helps you get to that other goal, that life goal that you've set. So look, I think it's critical. I generally look out 5 years. In fact, I used to, and I still do it now, but it's a little bit different. I used to have a planner which had the age of all the kids and what year they'd been at school and what age my husband and I were, so that every year, so when school fees would drop off as well. Now everyone's almost finished uni. We've got one left at uni. And so it's really, I know, it's really quite different. But, the classic thing is we used to be paying all the school fees. Where's that gone now? You want to be able to answer that question because I hear people, same thing about the tax refund. I hear people saying that such and such is finishing school this year and that money's already spent on the trip that the family's going to take, which happens almost every time. We're going on a family holiday after, the youngest finishes the HSC, which is what it is in most of the East Coast, apart from Victoria. And it's like it's spent, next year's school fees are spent on the family holiday to celebrate the end of school. So it's another year gone by before we've actually had the opportunity to save that money. So yeah, I think the goal setting, I had a gentleman ask me once in a financial service, around a round table in financial services. He said, I try and talk to my wife about money. She's like, she says, like, you handle it. And this is a guy who's in financial services. I said, why don't you talk to her about life goals? Like, what are the things that, if it's having kids, if it's moving from an apartment into a bigger apartment or buying a home, or is it owning 2 cars, those types of things, or is it just, daily treatment at the day spa, twice a year or something. Have a look at those goals and then come back and say, right, well, what are the decisions we need to make in relation to our open the front door cost to get us there? So it's just kind of a nice way of looking at goal setting. I just think it's essential. I just do every 5 years, I'm looking at how I'm going to spend those 5 years in a big picture sense. So whether I'm traveling, what type of work I'm doing, how I can navigate that with the type of work I'm doing, what are the sort of commitments. And I think that's just a really good way to have a look at that horizon. And it's finding a North Star, because I think they're really exciting. Like we just had almost 4 months in Europe last year.
I saw your pictures online.
Yes, that took a lot of preparation, and we worked, so it wasn't like we went over there and put our heels up on the deck kind of thing. But that took years of mental preparation to be able to sort of allow yourself to do that. But by the same token, navigating, like I'm on a couple of boards now, so navigating 12 months in advance when they're setting the board calendar for last year, I was able to say, could we do those meetings in the afternoon because I'll be in Europe? And the board's the chair's obliged, in case I'm the chair and one of them, I could make that change. But
it's like, we are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. We did this meeting to 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that's one of the nice things about planning. I think you get a lot of value from planning, because if I had to get up at midnight or 3 a.m. to do a call to Australia because I didn't plan it,
and it's you being accountable in your life that you have this responsibility
That's
that
right.
earns income that comes into your life and flows through all parts of your, it's like the big picture, right?
Yeah, so I've made a commitment. I have a choice, and I think that's one of the really nice things about planning. And there's just no harm in setting goals, and let's call them financial goals. There's not a goal I've seen, honestly, that doesn't require a financial element. Let's say you want to be in the Olympic Games in 2032, right? What are the decisions you need to make now to be able to train and dedicate your time? Okay, well, you either need to be training today, or you need to engage a particular coach to do that. There's going to be sacrifice along the way. It's going to cost money.
It's going to be time off work or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's rare that goal setting might be earning less income, and it might mean doing things quite differently. But then if you fill your time up, and in my case, like playing pickleball 2 or 3 times a week takes a bit of time out into your week, you have to navigate that. It's not just doesn't just happen and everything else manages to work. No, you actually make some choices.
I think I work a lot with people that are, like kind of resetting, starting from like scratch from divorce or whatever. Yeah. And a lot of the time it's really
hard. A great
hard.
teacher, by the way, but not a lesson I recommend.
Yeah, no, don't do that. But if you're going to, come see me.
Yes.
But a lot of the time it's really hard to imagine what life's going to be like. And it's hard to set goals. And I just talk to them about when you do know you're going to need money. So regardless, let's just do what we can. Let's get your, pretty much like what you're saying, get your front door covers, and then let's see what you can be saving and investing, because even though you can't imagine what life is going to be looking like, when you can, you're going to need money. I can assure you, whether it's, the Olympics, it's Europe, it's time off work, it's starting your business, whatever it is, you're going to need money, because money gives you choice and you'll already be at least on the way. But I think people get so caught up with goal setting. They think they need to have these big audacious goals that are like, I need $50,000 by X date for this goal. But it could be as simple as, I want to be able to go away for a weekend away twice a year, or to a day spa, or I want to not stress about my car rego coming in once a year. Like, I don't want to panic when I see, just stuff like that. I think people totally overcomplicate goal setting and think it needs to be bigger than it does.
Think about, in the context of financial well-being, like money causes an awful lot of stress. It does in relation. I think it's the number one reason why relationships bust up, money issues.
Yeah, for sure.
It does cause a lot of stress, and I think you put additional stress on yourself when you set a monetary goal that requires, everything to stay the same. So you need flexibility in it, and that's what I think is nice about saying, well, 5 years out from here, this is where I'd like to be. But, that's what we're going to aim for. That's why I say North Star, because it's directionally where you want to head. It's not locked in stone. So I think then you don't want to go through disappointment, or you're treading along nicely, and then your employer says, okay, well, we're cutting this division, so therefore you need to go find a job somewhere else, or we're going to redeploy you over here, but you don't love it. So then you have to make another decision about. It's very easy to count on the circumstances we have in front of us right now. And I think the nice thing about goal setting is that you can look at the set of circumstances as they are, but create flexibility in them so that you can feel comfortable if you navigate, you go off path a little bit and get back on the path. And that's why I think I say you can come back from money mistakes too. Like, just because you blew it all on something that you had to have, then you can always come back from that. You just need to maybe tighten your belt just a little bit to recover from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So there is one thing that I like to ask everybody that we finish up on. And actually, I don't know if I gave you the heads up on it, which I probably should have.
Tell me, I'm like.
But I always like to ask people what they wish their 20-year-old self knew about money and life. If you could go back in time and I asked somebody this the other day, but they weren't actually that much older than 20, so it didn't really work. But
well, my kids are great teachers in this respect. When I think about it, I've worked really hard and nonstop actually, and had 3 children and kept working. And I think maybe I could have done it a little bit slower, and I may well have been in the same place. I don't know. So like, I'm in a really good financial place now. I've been divorced. That was horrific. Started again with nothing at 40 basically, and rebuilt. So off a solid platform. But I think I've got kids doing everything. Someone's ski instructing in Canada and someone's playing rugby in Scotland, and they're all kind of really diverse. Kids are doing all sorts of things, which is really lovely. And so they're maybe teaching me that I didn't have to do it at that pace. But hey, we've got what we've got, partly because of the pace that I went at. So I think what I'd say is I would roll the dice again if you gave me the chance to do it differently. I think all of it's been, life's been a great experience so far. I'd like to continue it actually. But yeah, maybe I wouldn't have gone as hard. That's probably all I could say. Yeah, that maybe not exciting to people, but I think I went pretty hard.
That's pretty much exactly what I say as mine as well, is that I just put so much pressure on myself, and I just wish I had a bit more compassion for myself and was like, you can just chill out a bit. Like, you don't have to have such big, strong money goals.
I worked really hard, and I'm pretty sure none of my family ever really knew what the hell I was doing, or, being a partner in all those types of things. It was like, I remember when a funny story, my mum died a year ago this week. Which is a sad story.
That's not the funny part.
Just before, my book was launched, and it wasn't long after that she died. And I went to a family function, and she was there before me, and I walked in, and my mum said, "Oh, here's our daughter, Jacqueline." Mum always called me Jacqueline, not Jacqui. And she said, "She's an author." And it was like, oh, I used to be a partner. I used to be a chartered accountant. Like I was sort of rattling off all those things that I worked really hard to achieve, right? And Mum says, "Here's our daughter. She's an author." I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
I should have just written a book at 20.
Yeah, well, there you go. That could have been my what do I wish I knew. It would have been easier writing one at 20, but not with the wisdom I have now.
Maybe she just felt it was easier to sum up all the amazing things you've done with that one word.
Yeah. I have no doubt you're spot on.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I want to reiterate that everybody can get your book. So it's by Jacqui Clarke, Stop Worrying About Money, and it will absolutely change your life with money. So it's out by Wiley. You can get it at all major bookshops, but I will put it in the show notes as well, so you can buy it there. Where can people connect with you? Where are you
I'm pretty accessible, Gemma. So I've got a website, jacquiclarke.me. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, but on my website, actually, you can get a free chapter download, and those exercises or the templates that are with the book, I call it like a financial companion or financial exercise. They're all downloadable. So people are often just getting those and going, right, I'm just going to work through this. So there's, a dozen exercises that are extrapolated out of the book in there. So people can access all of that free.
Oh, great. And they're really good for everything from budgeting, goal setting. You've got stuff in there about value, like a template on value.
Understanding money, exactly, which really helps on that goal setting sort of horizon actually as well. But yeah, you can pretty much get your house in order and get your goals set with the templates, among other things.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll put the link to your website as well. But yeah, everybody go check that out. And thank you so much for your time and coming on.
Fun. Yeah, I'm going to do this in reverse when on your podcast. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm sure that's
reverse interview you.
All right, August.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.